Hey y'all, welcome to book club tonight. It's St. Patrick's Day, so wearing my green for y'all. I see a lot of green on here, so that's fun. But last time we were together before Leaders Retreat, we talked about how motivation is kind of overrated and how our environment and cues actually matter more when we're cultivating habits. But tonight we're going to talk about chapter 7 and 8 and the secret to self-control. Now, I've always wanted to be this exemplary example of self-control because it's a fruit of the spirit. So I feel like it must be important, something we all need in our lives, right? But it's not something that everybody's naturally gifted at. And what I've learned from this chapter is that the secret to self-control is actually just creating a more disciplined environment and spending less time in tempting situations. That was a comfort to me because I feel like we can all do that, right? Excuse me. So that study at the beginning of the chapter on the heroin addicts from Vietnam shows that addictions and essentially bad habits can dissolve when there's radical change in our environment. That gave me hope because people who are not naturally more disciplined are not all that different from ones who tend to struggle with discipline. These people are just simply better at structuring their lives in a way that doesn't require some heroic willpower or self-control. They simply spend less time in tempting situations, and essentially they're removing obstacles and friction that keep them from their good habits. So while, yes, they do have the best self-control, they also need to use it the least. So, for example, they probably have removed sweets and junk food from their homes so they're not tempted to eat it. They may have turned off their notifications on their phones so they're not tempted to grab it or be distracted every time it dings. Or they might have their work area neat and organized so they're not distracted by mess and a bunch of unnecessary things, right? So this is where it's really important that we recognize the cues in our lives, because if we're not careful and intentional with them, they can cause the behaviors that we want to stop. He says in the chapter that bad habits are autocatalytic, which basically means it's just a cycle that just keeps feeding itself. And that reminded me of sugar in our bodies. You know, we give it more, it wants more. We give it more, it wants more. And that's the same way our habits are. So he gave this example of you feel bad, so you eat junk food. So you feel bad, so you eat more junk food. And in our businesses, we can look at things the same way as far as things that we may not enjoy doing or things that we may even avoid doing. So maybe you think, I'm not good at recruiting, my joins are down, so you don't do your IPA, which reinforces those feelings, and you don't have any joins coming in. So again, you're not doing IPA. So it's just this vicious cycle that continues over and over and over until we're intentional to change it. And the same can be said for posting on social media, doing welcome calls, asking the magic question, taking our products. It all goes in this cycle, right? But the good news is we can break bad habits. But it's so much more than just resisting temptation. We need to create an environment that's conducive to the good behavior we want and reduce exposure to the cues that cause our bad habits. We've got to be self-aware, y'all. We've got to reflect and pay attention to what it is we're doing right before these bad habits. What are the cues that are bringing on these bad habits? Because if we know the cue, we can remove it and we can change it. So what does this look like in relation to our businesses? Well, here's a couple examples. If you have trouble being present during your family time, put your phone in the other room. Take off your Apple Watch. Those things are distractions. If you remove them, you can be present. If you need to be reading your books and doing personal growth when you're sitting on your couch, but you're watching TV instead, take your remote, put it in a box up on your mantle where it's not as convenient to grab, and instead keep your books on your table by the couch or on your coffee table, right? If you feel like you need to respond immediately to every message that comes in, which you don't because there's no Plexus emergencies. But if you feel like that, turn off your notifications on your phone and your watch and only look at your messenger when you're at your computer or when you open Messenger intentionally. This one may be my favorite. If you find yourself distracted during Monday Night Live, book club, or other trainings that you're on, maybe you're doing IPA. Maybe you're welcoming people in the team page or congratulating joins in the giveaway chat. Maybe you're putting your post up for the day. If you're doing these things during Monday Night Lives and book clubs, maybe you need to close out your Facebook and Messenger during calls. Did you know that on your computer and your phone, there's a feature, it's called Focus, and you can actually put your phone on Do Not Disturb plus no notifications during our call times. You can literally set it up to be a recurring thing. So every Monday night at 9, your phone or your computer is not dinging with notifications during our Monday Night Live time. So these are ways that you can remove distractions during your work time. So to create good habits, we want to keep them obvious, but to break the bad ones, the answer is actually to make them invisible. That's the secret to self-control. So that's chapter 7. Now we're going to move on to chapter 8. We've been talking about the first law of behavior change up to this point, and that's to make it obvious. Now we're going to switch gears and move to the second law, which is to make it irresistible. So we don't pay attention to these things or recognize them in our daily lives, but everything around us, everything in our culture is presented to be attractive, right? We're drawn to things that are attractive. It's presented so it's exaggerated and beautiful, and it makes things like food, especially junk food, shopping, travel, social media, all these things are presented in a way to make them irresistible to us. And basically what this means is if we want to increase the odds of a positive behavior happening, whatever that positive behavior is, we need to make it attractive and enticing. And to do that, we've got to understand what cravings are and how they work. So he says in the book that habits are dopamine-driven feedback loop. I didn't know what dopamine was, if we're being honest, so I had to look it up. And basically, it's just a neurotransmitter that drives cravings and desires in our body. And when we don't desire things or an outcome, we are not going to take the action necessary to get that thing or the outcome. Every behavior that is highly habit forming is associated with higher levels of dopamine, and it plays a big role in our motivation, learning and memory, punishment, and avoiding. The cool thing about dopamine, though, is that it isn't just released when we experience pleasure, it's also released just when we anticipate the pleasure. So when we predict an action will be rewarding, our dopamine levels spike in anticipation. That spike increases our motivation to act. The anticipation of a reward gets us to actually take the action, not the fulfillment of it. So I'm going to share my screen here and show y'all this chart. Oh, Brittany, can you give me permission to share my screen? I want to show y'all this chart from the book. Here we go. Okay, so, oh, now I can't see my notes, but I printed them out. I was prepared. Okay, so this is the chart from page 107, where it shows the different times our dopamine will spike as we're forming a habit in relation to our cues and cravings, responses, and rewards. But the one that I want to pay attention to is this one right here on line D. So this is where the cue is first identified and dopamine rises as the cravings are recognized. Next, the response is taken, but the reward doesn't come as quickly as expected, and that dopamine actually begins to drop. But then finally, over here, the reward comes. And many times that reward is later than we hoped, but the dopamine spikes again. It's like our brain says, see, I knew what I was doing. Don't forget to take this action next time. So this chart right here in this particular line really spoke to me in relation to our IPA. How many times do we send a message and get a response immediately? Not very often, okay? But we know that if we take the action and we send the message, whether it's a new contact or a follow-up, eventually we're likely to get a response, and the anticipation of that response is where our dopamine spikes, and that creates a habit of reaching out to people, doing new contacts, doing follow-ups. That's where this habit is created so that we take consistent action in this area. We take the action of messaging people so that we get the response, which is our reward. And then this action plus reward sequence ultimately leads to having people enroll and our team's growing, which is the bigger reward, right? So how do we apply this? Well, first we recognize every action we take happens because of the anticipation that precedes it. The craving leads to the response. Now, we can use temptation bundling to create our desired response by linking actions we need to do with the actions we want to do. We can use the same principle in sharing our products and opportunity on social media. We can link and associate our pink drink and our opportunity, things people need, with the things that our audience wants, like enjoying their days, playing with their kids, traveling, having extra money. We want to connect things they and we need them to do with things that they already want to do. So the same thing applies to us with our habits. Our behaviors become more attractive if we get to do something that we enjoy. This is where they call it pre-max principle comes into play. So even if we don't want to do something, we'll begin to become conditioned to do it if it means we get to do something we want to do along the way. So here's where habit stacking plus temptation bundling comes into play. Let's see. This is what that looks like. So after a current habit, I will do a habit I need to form. After I do the habit I need, I will do the habit I want. And some of those for our businesses could specifically look like, let me stop sharing this. That could specifically look like after I eat breakfast, I'll message 5 new people. After I message 5 new people, I'll check Facebook or Instagram. After I put my baby down for a nap, I'll do 5 retention connects. After I do 5 retention connects, I'll have a snack. After I finish lunch, I'll read 5 pages. After I read 5 pages, I'll put on my music. So we're taking a habit that we already have, connecting it with a habit that we know we need to do, but may not necessarily enjoy or love, like reading, our personal growth, or doing retention, or doing new contacts, things like that. And then we're rewarding ourselves with something that we want to do, like being on Facebook and Instagram for a little bit, or having a snack, or putting on your music and jamming out. So the goal here is to link things we don't love with things that we do enjoy so that we condition ourselves to do them because we're getting that reward after we do them. So if you don't love new contacts, follow-up, retention, reading, posting, whatever, link them to something you do enjoy and watch what kind of a difference that makes. That's how you create good, healthy habits for your business. So that is all I have. Chapter 7 and 8. All done.
Emily, that was so good. I love those examples you gave.
Thank you.
So applicable to our business. So thank you for delivering that information in a way that was so relevant. All right, this is where we branch off. Let me